Hi everyone, welcome to episode 11 of the EFL Magazine Business Podcast. Today's guest is Rob Howard. After a business career in the US, Rob became an EFL teacher and Neurolanguage coach. He trains teachers to build their own freelance businesses, and Rob is also the owner of Online Language Center, managing partner at Business Language Training Institute, and founder of EFLtalks. Rob is originally from the US, has lived in Brazil, and now lives in Gdansk, Poland.
Hey everyone, buckle up for a new episode of the EFL Magazine Business Podcast, the one and only podcast made to help you launch your business or take your existing business to a level of success you could never have imagined. Whether you're a school owner, freelancer, publisher, or other entrepreneur, you're sure to pick up lots of actionable advice when you listen to the EFL Magazine Business Podcast. Remember to visit EFLmagazine.com for great articles and features. Without further ado, here's your host, the founder of EFL Magazine, Philip Pound.
Welcome back, everybody, to the latest installment of the EFL Magazine podcast. And I'm really delighted to have Rob Howard on today. Now, that's Rob Howard, not Ron Howard. I'm sure Rob will tell you how annoyed he is about that little mistake people make. And Rob's in Poland today. And how are you, Rob?
I'm doing just great. And how are you?
I'm fantastic. The weather here getting a little spring-like. I think maybe tomorrow we're looking at 15 degrees. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. So for all the Americans there, you know.
I don't remember Fahrenheit anymore. I mean, it's 20 years in C. Where we have a beach day here today. It's -1.
That's nice. -1 during the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is it at night?
Sometimes -5.
Okay.
Lovely weather.
Lovely. Yeah. So how did you end up in Poland?
Well, basically, as you know, when we first met, I was in Brazil. I am originally from the States, and I moved to Brazil about 20 some odd years ago and worked there for about 15, 16 years and actually get tired of all the hot weather. And it was right about the time when the economic crisis started to hit Brazil. And I decided I wanted to make a change for somewhere different. As you know, we talked, I was thinking about Japan was on my list. And I decided to try and get into the EU. And originally I was going to head to Portugal. But on one of my trips, I was traveling here and discovered Poland, and I just really felt at home here. So I decided to give it a try, and it's been 4 years now.
That's it. It's that long. Wow.
Yeah.
Time flies. And what part of Poland are you in?
I'm in Gdansk. I'm right on the Baltic. It's like I look across and I can see Sweden. It's nice.
Wow. And so we'll rewind a little bit to Brazil. What took you to Brazil? You're from Boston originally.
Originally Boston. I've lived up and down the East Coast in the United States for years, and I just got tired of it, looking for a change. I had the ability that I could just pick up and leave at one point. So I decided, why not? I had an opportunity in Brazil with some real estate. So I took advantage, got a house on the water and relaxed. And it's actually what started me as an English teacher, because people that I knew there were saying, will you help me with my English? And that turned into opening up my first school with 140 students. And then after about a year or two of that, I moved to Rio, and that's where things started to take off from there.
Okay, and things seem to take off straight away. If you, how soon did it take to build up to 140 students?
2 months.
Oh, whoa. Well, how?
It was an advantage. And one of the funny things was that, we had probably about 5 or 6 schools in the area. And, they all did the regular little courses and everything else in English, tried to work with a book or whatever. And my background is business and marketing and sales. And what I did is, I did an evaluation, needs analysis for those teachers out there, which you should be doing, of the area and what the people needed. I was in a tourist area where you had nothing but hotels, restaurants, bars, and stores. And people were out there trying to teach people how to write essays. And I'm like, for who? So I looked at the needs. I went to the hotels, told them I could train their personnel for service English, made up my own course, and within 2 months, I had 140 students.
And you have a background in education as well.
Yeah, I did my minor because I wanted to be a teacher. Originally, I started my freshman year of university was to be a music teacher. So I decided I had to take all the psychology and education courses, but partway through, I decided I needed to make money. So I switched over to marketing and management and computer science. But I was able to take all the education courses and turn that into a minor, which we had in the States. So I knew someday when I retired, I would be a teacher. I expected it to be a math or a business or computer teacher. I never thought it would be English. So,
and your business background, you were involved in sales. What kind of industry?
Most of it, 2 major industries. I was involved in the early days. We had a family business where we were manufacturer's rep for electronic and electrical items. So I grew up learning distribution and marketing through there. And then after university, I went into telecommunications, and I worked for the major telco up in the Northeast, and, worked my way up to executive sales manager. So really, when you think about it, between giving lessons and, training staff, I've been a teacher most of my life. So.
And so you got up to executive manager in a telecoms company. And did you have some sort of, how would we say, pre-midlife crisis, or you had some yearning to get away from the cubicle? Was that it?
Yeah, it was actually, it was my midlife crisis because I guess I was around 30 at the time, if I remember correctly. And the funny thing is I'm also a musician, and I started playing with a local band back home in outside of Boston, and it was a reggae band, and the band started to take off. I started marketing and producing the band and then other bands. And it came to the point where I had 2 full-time jobs. And the president of the company, I sat down with him one day, and he said, you're really exhausted. I can tell. You're going to have to make a decision, this or the band. And, I had a conversation about the future in telecommunications and where it was going, and quit and joined the band. Fortunately for me, because this was 6 months before all the telecommunication companies were all bought up by larger companies, and I would have been let go. So it was nice for me because I took an early retirement package, which allowed me to do this. So, yeah.
And tell me about your sales force. Was it feet on the street, telesales? What kind?
Yeah, I've done virtually everything. In back with the telecommunications, it was the feet to the ground. I had people working in throughout New England. We had 2 offices that I ran, so we covered the 6 states with ours. And we had people out there, doing all the hard work, and I'd go after some of the larger deals. But then afterwards, I'd done some things on the side where people called me in for consulting. And at one point, I ended up with a telemarketing company. A friend of mine and I started a business doing telemarketing. So I learned a lot about sales over the phone and drawing a picture without seeing anything. And this was invaluable when it came to going to online teaching. So it was a great experience.
And how does that transfer to online teaching? What applications does it have?
Well, it's basically being able to tell a story, using your voice, using the proper wording, and working with people in the right way to get them to, number one, buy your product if you're selling, and number two, when you're working with students, getting them comfortable as a teacher. As you know, we'll, I'm sure, talk about COVID later, but since everybody is online now, people suddenly struggled because they didn't know how to comport themselves online.
So you left, you joined the band. Were you at that for a couple of years, and you looked at going to Brazil? Was that it?
Yeah, it was about 6 or 7 years, and that I did that, and then I did some traveling. I went out to Nashville and stuff like that, and lived in Tennessee, lived in Florida for a while, and then decided to move to Brazil. It was an adventure.
And what did you know about Brazil? Did you grow up with people from Brazil? What was the draw?
Well, I was a big fan of samba music and Tom Jobim. And I knew that they had nuts called Brazil nuts, which, as they say on The Simpsons, in Brazil, they're just called nuts. So not very much about it at all, but, that's kind of the way I am. I like to be adventurous. So I did date a girl in the States from Brazil, so I knew a little bit about it and had traveled there for 2 months before I moved there.
So back then, I'm sure Brazil has changed, but I think I was in Brazil in 2002. And at that time, because I also worked in telecommunications, kind of similar job.
Yeah.
So I did notice that telecoms infrastructure was not so good in Brazil at that time. So to try to make a foreign call, you have to go to special, I don't know what it's called, special depot with all these. It looks a little bit like something from the movie Brazil, actually. If you've ever seen that movie. So, what struck you about Brazil when you arrived?
Well, for me, it was a little different. I was actually there at the same time as you. I'm surprised. We probably bumped into each other on the street. But when I first lived in the Northeast, it was funny because being out in the wilderness, what they would do, first of all, when I first started phone service, it took 4 months for them to put it in. And once I got it, it was up for 2 days. And then what they do there is they cut the wires off of the poles because they resell the copper. And there was no cell service. So it was tough to do anything with internet, telephone, anything. By the time I moved to Rio, everybody was really, I would say almost everybody had at least one cell phone. And the cable companies were then, selling the phone as part of a package. So I didn't have to deal with the local telecoms at all, which was nice.
So you arrived. You were living in Rio. I was in Rio around the same time,
Yeah.
and walking up and down
Yeah.
Copacabana. I remember it was actually. I remember exactly when it was. It was in September 2002 because it was 1 year anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah.
I was there at that time. So you arrive in Brazil, and as you've said, things took off pretty well.
Mhm.
So you came in, you had all this marketing, sales background, and you were able to apply it to education, to English
Yep.
language education. Were there other players in the market as sophisticated as you, or how
I
would you compare
you
marketing?
know, back then it was very, very difficult to get people to do anything online. Skype was just out. So people, that was all they really knew about talking online. And using Skype was about it. I would say I needed to talk to about 100 people to get 2 people interested in trying it and maybe 1 client to work online. And what I tell teachers today is that, due to COVID, they had instant online success. 20 years I fought to try and get enough online students so I could move around and basically be portable, like I am now. But it took 20 years to really build it to this level, because people just did not want to study online. They wanted a face-to-face teacher. And, it was tough in the early years. It was slow growing. Of course, I taught a lot of face-to-face to augment, that coming in. But once, after I would say 5 years, when people realized and the word of mouth got out and I started building up a lot of clientele, it became easier. And this is when courses started to develop online courses slowly.
And when you first started with 140 students, this was a brick and mortar business, was it?
Yeah. This was brick and mortar.
And how long did you stay at that, and how did you transition to online?
It was about 2 years doing that with the school up in the Northeast. And then when I got to Rio, I started with a course that was there. And I was teaching at a regular course, which is really where I learned a lot more about, teaching English. Because prior to that, it was primarily service English. So I was teaching specific things that I developed. And then I worked with some different programs with the U.S. consulate for, teenagers. Had advanced teenagers who were working at a school where I taught 100 students there, and they were basically zero. They started from zero, but mostly what I did is I work with the conversation classes and the advanced classes in the course. As I started to move into the specialization online, and then started teaching for for the TOEFL exam and IELTs. And this is where, once I built up a clientele with that, a lot of online students came in.
Okay. And around what year was this, Rob? I just want to kind of get an idea of the technology available back then.
God,
what were you working with? Well,
back then it was before Zoom. It was back in the early days. I originally started actually with some classes on ICQ, if you remember that.
No, please explain ICQ.
ICQ was years and years ago. It was basically just almost like a chat room, no video. And I started off, really, there was a guy I met accidentally when I was trying to talk to my son on ICQ, who turns out is from Sweden here. And I started helping him with his English about I'd say about 30 years ago. And so I knew, how to work with ICQ. I started there, but then quickly went to Skype. And then we had WizIQ, which was out of India, which you and I know well, and used that for a few years, and then played with other platforms. And as soon as Zoom came around, Zoom was a spinoff from the people from Cisco, and Boston-based, yes. So I immediately went with Zoom, and I've been using Zoom since I started, and I really love it as a platform. So I recommend it to everybody, and I don't get money from them. I wish I could.
And so you start out ICQ. Is that a little bit like Messenger? Back then?
It was exactly a messenger.
Wow, that's a blast from the past. So you started on that. You started teaching, and then it was gradually face to face. You started using Skype when it first came out. I don't know, when did Skype first come out? Mid 2000s, was it? Maybe.
Yeah, I think it was like 2007 or 2008. I think, if I remember.
So you jumped on that straight away. You were like, "Oh, this is for me." Had you anticipated Skype would come, or did you hear some?
Well, there were other things that were being tested at the time. Being in telecommunications, I don't know if you remember the old. I used to sell this. It was out of New Hampshire. Was the big video conferencing software packages that used to be like a 50-inch TV with you had to put in a T1 and you'd go for a while, and then it went to the AT&T phone, if you remember that, which lasted about 2 years. So there was technology out there from people, nothing great, nothing organized, and I knew of some and I tried them, but Skype was easy because you could get people to sign up with Skype quite easily. So that's why it was probably the first software package that was available.
Now, on the face of it, do you think that Brazil would be an ideal place for something like Skype or remote learning, because the sheer size of the place, the distance between people, like Australia, I suppose. Right. Is that the case? Or?
It wasn't in the early days. It was very, very difficult to get people involved until I got into some of the specialty stuff. For example, what started to happen is I met a few Navy guys that had to take the TOEFL exam, and then they told other people. So people at other bases, people in other parts of the country started contacting. Now I'm sure it's much easier. I've been out of there for 4 years now, but it was getting better back before I left, where you could teach, any major city, anybody who had decent internet. And, a lot of people in Brazil, well, all the teachers in Brazil right now have been trying to teach online. So, yeah.
And why was there a reluctance? Some countries took up online teaching much faster than others. I know here in Japan, very slow as well. People were hesitant, even about using video conferencing up to 2 or 3 years ago. Why in Brazil?
I think it was just basically, two things. You have the economic problem where people didn't have internet. A lot of people still, as surprisingly with COVID, what we found around the world, a lot of people, even though they have a computer, they don't have cameras. They don't have microphones and headphones. I was surprised to see the numbers of this. We did a research study here with the university, and very surprised to find out how many people don't have cameras. And in the early days, I think people were afraid to get online and, show themselves. They felt it very impersonal. Actually, we've known each other, I would say, going on 6 years, and we've actually never met.
Yeah, sure.
Face to face.
Someday.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
But, people weren't used to that back then. And the only people that they would normally talk to on Skype were maybe friends and family. But they weren't used to dealing with a stranger online, and they felt for some reason that was impersonal. So you take the technological problems of people having slow computers or slow internet. That was one reluctance. On the other side of that, people thought that it was just too impersonal and it was impossible. And I still hear from teachers today that after a year of teaching online, think it's impossible to teach online, which I think is ridiculous.
And so you started a company, you're now working online. So tell me about if somebody wants to get into teaching online. Obviously there's a number of options. They can teach for one of the bigger companies. They can teach independently. Is there room for entrepreneurs in the online teaching space? Is it crowded? Where's the opportunity?
Well, I think right now, because of COVID, it's really overcrowded. Everybody and their brother seems to be an online teacher. If you go to social media, you see stuff all the time. It makes it harder for people who are qualified and have experience and really have a good program, to get out there. There's always opportunities. And I think the problem is that people are probably going about it the wrong way. They need to learn how to be an entrepreneur, number one. And this is really, I think, where half the people fail. There's a lot to being an entrepreneur. There is a market. It's tougher. As you'll notice, a big thing that's happening now, and I would say started since COVID, is because English teachers are having so much trouble finding students, now that suddenly become teacher trainers. And, then everybody's trying to move themselves up to teach other people. And, they're not necessarily qualified. The same thing with coaching. We have everything in coaching. People say, oh, I'm a coach because it's hot right now. And I really think you need to be a qualified teacher. You need to be patient. You're not going to build a business overnight. And you need to work. It's hard work. It doesn't come that, overnight like I did with a face-to-face. I actually tell most people, unfortunately with COVID, this isn't true, but I tell most teachers not to get into online. They're better off advertising in the local supermarket or put up the little tear-off tags on a telephone pole, because it's a lot less work and they'll probably get a better payoff in the long run. Online is not easy to do it the right way and to be successful at it. I know, and people who've been at it for years can tell you there's a lot of trial and error, just like anything in life, any type of business.
So you mentioned trial and error. What are some of the errors people are making?
I think some people are trying to overuse technology because they think they need to make things exciting and flashy. I have no problem doing a conversation class like we're doing here, face to face. We can see each other. I guess they can't see us with the podcast. But, a lot of mistakes there's this thing everybody always says, work outside of your comfort zone. And, I really hate this expression because I think it's a cute meme, like hang in there with the cat hanging. But people need to work within their comfort zone, within their knowledge zone, within their skill zone, and in some cases, just stay within your time zone. And I think you really need to concentrate on what it is you know, what it is you're good at, and that's going to come across as being a teacher. It's building your niche. And this working outside the comfort zone is probably not the best advice for an online school.
So if some of our listeners are thinking about, maybe after this conversation, thinking about something outside of online teaching, you mentioned some people don't know how to be an entrepreneur or what they might face being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So can you go through some of the qualities that you need to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, you really, number one, for any kind of business, the first thing you need is passion. You need to be passionate about what it is you're doing. So you put your energy into this because you're going to put a lot of your life, time, blood, sweat, and tears into it. But you need to understand a little bit about how business works. It's not like, okay, flip on and all the money's going to come flying in. There's a lot of planning that you have to do. You have to be determined to keep at it. You have to be adaptable because things change. One plan, you may have a plan to do one thing and it turns around into another. Like anything in sales, you got to be thick-skinned because you're going to hear a lot of no's. And, you have to learn how to take no for an answer without letting it kill any sense of, building the business. But most of all, you have to be confident and comfortable with what it is that you're doing and selling with your business. And if you can do those things and plan properly, stay away from the info gypsies that tell you, they know everything about how to build a business. Take a real business course.
Okay. Even online, Udemy,
Exactly.
Coaching.
Udemy, Coursera, take a basic business course, not one of these info gypsies. Some of these things, what I tell teachers often when I'm training on, starting a business or dealing with their own business is when you look at what they would have you do on social media with building the funnel and everything else, this is important for your business, for the magazine. How many students can the average person handle? You're talking between average 20 to 30 tops, and sometimes it'll be under 20. Why will you put so much effort into getting 1,000 people interested when you can just need to target 20 students? So don't listen to the info gypsies. It's a waste of time. This is one of the big mistakes. And, basically, the biggest mistake I think most people make is they also don't know how to do the life-work balance. And they either don't put enough into the business or they put too much into it and they burn out very quickly.
So you brought up a topic we said we would talk about. I've just thought of a new portmanteau, gurupreneurs. There you go.
Yeah.
So when I first started EFL magazine, there was a great podcast. It was, I don't know if it's still around, but they said they were going to take it down. It was all for free. It was called The Foolish Adventure Show. And what the marketing guy was Tim Connolly, I think. So if you want to look at him, but I don't think he does so much stuff online now. But it was really great. All free, the information. And they warned about the same thing, that online, you'll see people who'll tell you how to make money online by telling people how to make money online. So that's it. They've never actually run a business, but they're
Yep.
very snazzy at the marketing, and you'll see their stuff there.
Sure.
So talk to me a little bit about.
Yeah, we see this all the time, and this was a major problem. I'm not picking on Brazil. It's just that's where I spent most of my time, but it's happening all over the world. That people come up with snazzy graphics. They're on Instagram all the time. They're making, getting everything, giving a lot of promises, coming up with gimmicks and everything else that they think are going to help you sell. And the problem is that they haven't done it themselves. I see people, they've been paid webinars that you have to pay a lot of money for that told you how to be successful on Instagram. And every single thing that they said was Googleable and you could have got for free. And, I always equate this, if you look at your spam, I'm constantly getting spam. First page Google, SEO, first page. The first thing I do is I Google them and see where they are. And, if you Google me, and now because of EFLtalks, if you Google EFLtalks, it comes up on the first page. And then I have a guy who's on page 50 telling me that he's going to improve my statistics and everything else. It's, come on.
Or the guy who, the one, the guy who says, in Instagram guru, thought leader, and he has 10 followers on Instagram or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. And, I've seen groups out there, even Facebook groups, where they say, oh, I have, 20,000 followers. No, you have 20,000 people that you added to your page. Are you going to teach all 20,000 of these? When? Everybody thinks that they're going to get rich and they can sit on their ass, if I can say that, and be in their pajama bottoms and make tons of money online because everybody is suddenly going to come to them and take their course. It doesn't happen that way. And you eventually will work up. You can get a good clientele. You can make a comfortable living. And if you want, you start to grow. You start to add teachers like I did with my company. At one point, I was up to 12 teachers when I was in Brazil. But I decided now, the amount of work, the balance and everything else, I've cut back since I've been here. In fact, I only work less than half a day every day. And it makes me enough money because I'm getting qualified people that are willing to pay the price of what I give them, so I don't have to work so hard. So you need to make a business model that's also scalable, so you can be lazy if you want.
And for people who don't come from a sales background, I think for you and me, we're very intolerant of sales techniques, I think.
Yes.
So for example, I get this on my page sometimes, or I get people and they come to me, and I want to offer you something for free. And, you're going to go into a mailing list and it all seems too good to be true, or people are too pushy with the sales.
Yeah.
So as advice for somebody to sell their business or market their business, one way to go wrong would be to be too timid and not put yourself forward enough. But then there is the other extreme, isn't it? It's very off-putting, the cheesy sales guy. So how do you strike the balance there in sales?
By being yourself. We did, a few years ago, I did a debate with a friend of mine, and she's very, how can I put it? She's very present on social marketing, and she does a lot of, marketing to bring people in. And she's very aggressive with it. I'm laid back. I don't advertise. I pretty much strictly work from word of mouth. Everybody that I get is a referral from somebody else in most cases. And we did a debate about this. And, you have to find where you're comfortable between, the hard sell, between the soft sell, between the amount of marketing you do and how much, time and effort you're going to put into all of this. I know a lot of people who spend hours and hours on social media to bring in one student. It's not worth it. And while that person is spending those hours, I'm spending that time making money from the students that I already have. So you need to decide, not every business needs heavy advertisement. Like, for example, EFL Magazine, which I think is a wonderful magazine, by the way, and EFLtalks, we kind of started around the same time. We need to advertise because we're building an audience, but we're not teaching one-to-one or in groups. So it's different. You need to really think about what it is you want to do. And instead of thinking outside the box like everybody tells you to do, think inside your box, inside your comfort zone, and you'll get there.
And go what you know and what you're comfortable with. So that's your
Exactly.
message, really. Don't try to do something you can't temperamentally not suited to or you feel uncomfortable with just because some gurupreneur said you have to go to the bank and withdraw $2,000 for his seminar.
Yes.
And we know who these guys are. Mostly guys. I actually don't know.
There's a lot of women out there too who are doing it now too. It really kind of bothers me because, as you know, I work with a few charitable organizations, and what we do is a lot of webinars and a lot of training and a lot of information and professional development for free. And especially in these COVID times, a lot of people are doing webinars, and it's amazing to me that people out there kind of have the nerve to charge people money for what people are giving away for free. As far as training, as far as ideas of building a business, there's plenty out there for free that you can find. And I recommend to anybody, the best way to market yourself, the best way to get clients is talk to the clients that you have now and ask for a couple of their friends. If you do that, you'll never need to advertise, and think of all the extra time you have.
So your retention rate is up there. You've had students for how many years? 5 years, more?
I've had most of my students, depending on what it is. For example, if it's TOEFL or interviews, things like that, usually they're about 2 or 3 months. The people that call me up on Monday and say, I have to take the test on Friday, can you help me? I say no, because, you can't do that short term. But the majority of my students, I would say, most of them are well over a year, most of them over 2 to 3 years. And it depends on what it is they're looking for. Because I work with students mostly at the C1, C2 level, it's a shorter term, only because they reached the goal that they were set out to work with. And because I work mostly with executives, mostly with professionals, IT professionals, a lot, I tend to do more classes per week. So this makes for a shorter term.
So you have the online business. You're happy. You're kind of content. You have your lifestyle, and
Yep.
you have other things going on, as we mentioned, EFLtalks. But if you weren't doing online teaching, where would you see the opportunities in ELT or
With COVID or without?
well, let's say COVID, and it's going to be over someday. So let's say how can we prepare for the upturn?
After COVID is gone, I think the best thing that you do is you work within your local area. It's going to be much easier. You have the advantage of working online, which I love. Obviously, I don't fight traffic. So you want to work within a small geographic area. Have the people come to you so you don't have to travel, whether it be at your house, whether it be, rent a small office, whatever, and advertise locally. It costs virtually nothing to advertise around town locally. And once you build up some clientele, you work with, word of mouth, you'll always have clients. Now, if you're looking to be the next, major person that hires 100 teachers and everything else, that's a whole different aspect. If you're looking to work online and staying online, like I plan on, concentrate on making you a better teacher. The key to being, as they say, I hate the term teacherpreneur. I think it's too overused. But if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, you constantly, like anything in life, have to improve your own skills. And that's what's going to keep bringing you more customers. So I would say right now, what you should be doing, go to these webinars, join teachers associations, read EFL magazines, watch the videos on EFLtalks, improve yourself now so you're ready and better now and also in the future. But, there's two ways to go. You can do a hybrid, teach face-to-face and teach online.
And you brought up something really, really worth focusing on, and that was get the nuts and bolts of business right first. So you had a family business, so you knew everything about the distribution, cleaning the floor, dealing with the customers. So you finance, customer service. It's all there, isn't it? In a smaller business, medium-sized business, and you advertise in the local area, you get used to cash flow business, marketing, and then of course you can go on to your 100 teachers if you want, but
sure,
start with the basics.
That's it. It's if you follow Facebook and some of the groups that are out there, people say, oh, I have an online business, how much should I charge? Wait a minute, how do you have an online business when you don't know what to charge yet? This means part of setting up any successful business is setting up a business plan. All of these things need to be done before you pick up your first student. You need to know what to charge. You need to know what you're going to teach. You need to know where your platform is. You need to have materials, everything. This needs to be done beforehand. And you have to understand business. And I see it all the time. Oh, what do you use for a platform? What do you use for scheduling? And, these are from people who are already advertising online classes. It's backwards.
No, that's a really good point, because I think we all suffer from that, don't we? So I start this podcast. I look, which is the best microphone to get? Which is the best hosting provider? What is the best thing? And people get geeked out on equipment, don't they? And they never do anything. They ask questions on Facebook groups. The best microphone is the one you're using. The best platform is the one you're using. It's that simple. Just switch on and do it. So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of an elaborate procrastination, isn't it?
It can be. But yeah, it's this is where the passion really comes into it.
So I wanted to move on to your plans for the future. What's out there for Rob Howard?
Retirement. That's it. No. Well, currently, if I couldn't plug EFLtalks, which you're well aware of, and we plan on doing more talks coming up this year, and I want to keep that going. And you've been very supportive over the years, so we thank you. And also this year, I've been working with the IATEFL BESIG as the joint web and online coordinator, and now I'm joint coordinator for the group. So we're working more and more with trying to get membership up for this group, doing more and more online training for business English professionals. Because the way I look at it, when you look at why do people take English? Why are people spending 6-8 years to learn to speak English properly? It's not for their 1-week vacation to Disney or to watch Netflix. Most people are learning for the workplace and for their career. And there's a lot more than just teaching grammar and verbs like we're used to in the classroom once we get to the level of business English. And that's where trying to help teachers make that transition. So to go beyond, the regular English that we teach in courses today.
What are the difficulties going on to teaching business English? What have you found?
So many different things. As you know, living on the other side of the world, one of the major problems that you immediately have is differences in culture. And you need to understand cultural problems, cultural norms. This is a key to any type of communication. And so you need to know the intercultural morals of every culture you're going to deal with. Plus, realize that language is treated differently in different countries. You need to know where there's a problem. For instance, if you look at, false cognates, this can make a huge difference when you're working with, $1 million contracts. You need to make sure people understand. And what's the culture of understanding? You'll find that in some cultures, they'll agree with you just to save face, even though they may not know what you're actually saying. And so we do a lot of different talks about this. And it's really all new subject matter for continuing to learn. So the cultural differences, the vocabulary, the nuance, the skills of negotiation.
And for you, talking about cultural difference, for somebody doing business in Brazil or doing business in Poland, what difficulties, what new things did you find? What kind of advice can you give?
Well, I don't teach much in Poland. Most of my teaching is in Russia right now and Belarus. And the thing that I find is it's a different mindset. So people get one idea in their head, and the language doesn't necessarily change their mind. It's kind of hard to explain. In Brazil, people are very open, they're very trusting. And there's whole studies of this, of low context and high context speakers and learners. And selling a person in Brazil is much different than selling someone in Russia. For example, let's even take American and British. This would be a more obvious thing. Americans, we're quick, get to the point, tell me what I need to know. I want the facts. That's it. Whereas, the British tend to be slower. It takes a little bit more time. If you look at German culture, they tend to be very more deliberate, facts only. Japanese, I haven't worked that much with them, but I know in doing business with Japanese in the States, it's, just getting right to the point and not a lot of emotion. Where in Brazil, I can be emotional, and that's what helps there. So every culture is different, and it's knowing how to deal in these cultures can be difficult for anybody.
So you did mention EFO Talks. What's for the future for EFO Talks?
Well, we have more talks. I'm very happy to say, for something that we didn't think would last very long, it's been over 5 years. We've got over 35 different events that we've had. We've got over 400 speakers, of which you are one, and over 600 videos archived now. The future is I want to get that up to 1,000. I'd like 1,000 videos with 500 speakers, probably within the next, hopefully within the next year and a half. And we're going to concentrate more and more on more specifics. For instance, instead of just having general talks, we'll have one whole talk, a whole day of EFO Talks on maybe reading or speaking. We've done a few of these already, plus working with different aspects of culture, coaching. We're just going to keep at it. We do have some other ideas for the future, but I won't divulge them yet.
Okay. And if people want to get in contact with you, Rob, people in the group or budding entrepreneurs in ELT, or people who want to transfer to, they want to become the next business person. What's a good way to chat with you? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram?
Best way, probably, I'm on Facebook. I don't use Instagram much because I'm not doing silly videos to get people's attention. I don't tweet much because, unlike Donald, I don't think every American needs to send a tweet every day. Best way is probably either through LinkedIn or through Facebook. Or if they go to I have a landing page which goes to everything that I do, which is really easy. It's robhoward.me.
Oh,
for Montenegro, not me.
Ah, okay. robhoward.me. And this will be posted in the group as well. So if there's anybody wants, please do join the EFL Magazine Business Podcast group. And so we'll put it up there. So Rob Howard, thank you very much.
Philip, it's a pleasure. Always nice to talk to you. And everybody out there, subscribe to EFL Magazine. It's wonderful.
Thanks for listening to the EFL Magazine Business Podcast with Philip Pound. For more great advice and resources, check out EFLmagazine.com. If you found this podcast helpful, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. See you next time.